All right. I believe this is episode number 3 of the Blue Ox Running Podcast. Welcome, everybody. We are going to get started by asking Alicia, as we always do, what is one word that describes your life in the last time that people heard from you? Your whole life in one word.
Contentment.
Oh, contentment. We're going to hear about that later, maybe. What about one word for your running right now, since the last time people heard from you?
I didn't think about this one. Maybe rest.
Rest. Okay. Does that have anything to do with all the snow that we got?
No.
Oh, okay. Rest and contentment. That's very good. We're going to get going. Here's the intro song, and then we're going to go back to those words, and we do have a special guest for us this week. So what's your spring running goal?
Qualify for the Boston Marathon.
Claim the beer mile title.
Training for a triathlon. 20 minutes again in a 5K.
To run happy.
Balance running and family.
Finish Grandma's marathon.
To not die.
Fast.
Or slow.
Let's go! Fast or slow? Let's go! Fast or slow?
All right. So welcome everybody to the third episode of the Blue Ox Running Podcast. We are going to speak with a guest later, but we also want to get into, just kind of how the store's going. Alicia, you said that your life is content right now. What does that mean?
Well, I guess it's more about finding contentment with all the snow days, with kids home, to not grumble, but try to find the contentment and the good in that.
Yeah.
And even in the running in that.
Yeah.
Get out.
I was thinking actually on my run today how I had a conversation with a couple guys I ran with this weekend, how in the marathon, everyone thinks that like mile 20 is the hardest. Like mile 20, there's supposed to be a big wall. You have 6 miles to go. I actually think the hardest point in a marathon, and this relates to winter, by the way, with where we're at right now. The hardest point of the marathon for me is mile 16 because you have 10 to go. You have 16 down and 10 to go. 10 still feels like a long ways to go. It is a long ways to go. And if you feel any kind of aches and pains, it's like 10 miles is a longer way to go than 6. Once you're at 22 or 23, you're hopefully just in survival mode and getting to the finish line. But 10 to go is difficult for me. And I thought about today, right now, we're at 10 weeks to go for people that are trained for the Eau Claire half and the Eau Claire full. So it still feels like we have a few weeks to go. Like, it's not like we're hitting our taper. It's not like we're even in those spring months yet. But when you're kind of in the grind and there's a lot of work to do and you still have 10 weeks to go right now, this is kind of the most mentally draining part of winter, I feel like, when we're still not really in the clear. And of course, we got a lot of snow. For people that don't know, how much snow did we get in the past week even? Do you know?
I don't even know.
We got 12 on the other day. We didn't have school yesterday again. 9 snow days, is that right?
Yeah, number 9 snow days. My kids were counting down to the first day of spring.
Yeah, we're getting into spring. We're not getting into spring. We're thinking about spring. We're getting into track season and everything. But what was your word for your training? Rest?
Rest.
Does that have anything to do with it being icy and snowy out or what?
No, not really. I've been getting out each day. It's been actually quite invigorating, running in the snow, and it just feels good to be out in the fresh air. But I have a little nagging injury, nothing that's really bothering. It's just this little thing that's not affecting my running. But this week I'm going to take kind of a down week just to be cautious of that and to listen to our bodies.
Yeah, that's good. And I feel like right now, especially with all there's just so much snow out on the banks where you have to like either be tunneled in on the road on all the ice or tunneled in on the sidewalks, and some of them aren't paved or snow blown or anything. So I feel like it's just an effort to kind of just get around. It's not even like the actual running. I feel great when I'm out running, and it is invigorating when you have a clear sky and it's maybe a little bit too cold, but you're bundled for it. The fresh air, I think, feels just as good in winter when you're dressed for it, right? But for me, like my whole run this morning was all on yak tracks, which is kind of what I needed to do for being on the ice. I usually don't do yak tracks like every day of the week. It's only on those worst days, but there's so much snowpack and ice, and there's like no concrete out there right now to where I used them. And I can just kind of tell when you're pounding on the ice and the yak tracks, it's a little bit different pounding on especially my heel and my knees. So got to be careful out there. Got to take into account for it. It's easy to just want to do the same exact thing that you would otherwise be doing if it's 60 degrees and sunny out. But the conditions do dictate a slower pace, and sometimes kind of a harder pounding on the ice. But again, if you're going slower, hopefully that you're using your recovery days well, and it all kind of evens out. Hopefully you get a little bit more cross training, and man, that 40 degrees is going to feel fantastic once the snow goes away. Where is the snow going to go, by the way? I keep looking at it all, and I'm just like, this is just going to be a big swamp for like a month. Right? Mm-hmm. It's gonna, maybe we shouldn't think about it. All right. So what we want to do is we want to get into our Hear the Herd segment, which is the way that we bring people from the community, interviews, basically just conversations with people that we see coming in and out of our doors, whether it's people from the group run or buying stuff at Blue Ox Running or people that we meet at races. We come across a lot of different stories, and we love to see the variety of people that are out there. And today is definitely no exception. Deana Cantley has been in our store from the beginning, from 2017 when we opened the doors. And before I get into her whole story and she shares her whole story with us, let's get into Hear the Herd audio. All right, that last moo there tells us that we can hear from the herd now. So Deana Cantley, and I'm being really careful to pronounce her name correctly because, Dr. Moo with Matt Evans was a very short-lived nickname that he is no longer going to go by, except for I hope he is going to go by because it kind of sticks from this podcast. I did hear that Matt Evans got mooed at the week that he did the podcast, so hopefully people are listening and mooing at other people of the herd here. But the reason I say Deana is because, Alicia, your name is spelled in a way that people can mispronounce. I called Deana one time, and we all know now. Deana Cantley is on the show with us right now. She's got a fantastic story that's running related. She's done it all. She's done marathons. She's done ultras. She's been on the trails. She's been on the roads. But what we want to do in this podcast and what's really apropos for her is to share a little bit more behind just maybe what the training log says and the race results. So
welcome, Deana.
Welcome, Deana.
You.
Welcome, Deana. And why don't you give us a good idea of just what you have on the schedule for this year? Like, where are you in your running career? Are you doing shorter races, longer races? What do you like to do, and what do you have coming up?
Well, I definitely prefer trails, and this year, obviously I'm not out on the trails a heck of a lot right now, but I actually love winter running because I feel like even road runs kind of are like trail runs because you're jumping snowbanks and stuff like that. Yeah. But I am currently training for the Chippewa 50K, which is at the end of April.
And by that time, maybe some of the snow will be gone.
Oh, I'm really hoping so.
Maybe not.
Was it snowy last year? Because we got a storm, we got a blizzard 3 weeks before the Eau Claire Marathon, which would have been only 2 weeks before the Chippewa 50K, right?
Right. I think the trails were actually pretty good for it. I only did it's a 10K, but it's closer to 7 miles. Yeah. But yeah, the trails were pretty good last year, I think.
I love that, by the way, with trail running. It's like people get really bent out of shape when their Garmin or their GPS is like not exactly on a road race what it is. And you go to some of these trail races, it's supposed to be a 50K and it's like, it's like 35 miles instead of 31. The 10K is like kind of between 6 and 7, no big deal. It's just
right.
I'm always shocked, like these 100-milers, and they're like, "Oh, it's 103."
Yeah.
I'm like,
103
that's
superior.
kind of a
that's kind of a big deal, especially at mile 99 when the difference between going one more and 4 more. That's how Burning River was. It's 102.7. So anyway, Chippewa 50K again this year.
Yep.
Awesome. How's the training going for that?
I'm probably right about where I want to be. I'm right around 30 miles a week. I'm not a huge mileage runner because I have to try and listen to my body. A lot going on there.
What's the most that you've been at before with other training?
50-ish.
Yeah. Good.
So I try and do two longer runs back to back on the weekends.
Yep. Is that the main difference in your training when you did when I know you've been doing ultras for a while? Is that kind of your staple, the back to back long run? That's kind of different than when you were doing marathons.
Yeah. Yep. And like I said, my mileage isn't huge, so I just kind of do what I can with that. But I'm also slow, so I feel like I can get away with doing that.
Yeah.
When I saw you out running, do you always run with one of your dogs, or
I have one dog. I just got her last August, so running with her is a completely new experience for me.
Because you were with your dog, the night I saw you.
Yep.
Very good. So we're doing some longer stuff. Anything in the fall, the summer, or are you going to kind of feel it out?
I'm signed up for the Afton 25K. She'll be 11 at the time. My 11-year-old is going to do that with me.
Really? We're both doing that too.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's an awesome race. And then, let's see, August is kind of more my goal race. That's the Marquette 50K.
Okay.
I think that one's going to be pretty tough.
Yeah.
I've heard that one's a really tough one. You go up and down some, UP mountains.
Yep.
And then I'm hoping to kind of ride that into a distance PR at the Goosebumps 24 hour.
Oh,
in
very good. Oh, so you're doing the 24?
Yep.
Did you do that last year or the 6 hour?
This will be my third year, I believe, doing the 24 hour.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you make that a family event as well.
We do. Yep. All 3 kids have come Lee wasn't able to make it last year since she's in college, but all 3 kids come. They want to get their 100-miler sweatshirts. Lee and Roisin both have theirs. Brendan will be getting his this year,
cool.
Hopefully. So
I know we'll get there, but I think in 2015 is when you say you want to set a PR for your 24-hour distance. What have you done there before?
That in 2015, I did 70 miles in right around, I think it was like 21 and a half hours because I accidentally napped a little bit longer than I planned to.
That happens.
Yeah.
That's another difference between the roads and the trails. Just take a nap.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. So 20. So you were done after 21 hours, 21-ish.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So you'll be able to. So you're looking at beating 70 miles.
Something over 70.
24. Awesome.
Yep. And I can't remember what I need to get my 300-mile lifetime patch at Goosebumps, but I think if I get over 70 miles, I'll get that patch.
When did that race start? Because I've heard a lot about it in the last year. I'm going to do the 6 hour this year, and it has been. Well, maybe it's the way the internet works and what I'm interested in and the groups I join and stuff. But I keep seeing a ton about it, and I feel like even this year there was like a call like it's going to close down, like it's going to fill up. So has it been more and more popular?
It's been growing and growing. I can't remember if this is going to be the 7th or 8th year. It just started out with the 6 hour, and I should have probably had notes or something. He only had like, I want to say maybe shy of 20 people the first year for the 6 hour, and it's grown and grown. And
describe it. I mean, it's not this big trail ultra that you're driving the whole day, and it's not a point to point or anything, right? It's a loop course.
It's a loop course. It's on an island that's actually in the backwaters of the Mississippi. Down
in La Crosse.
Down in La Crosse. Yep. The loop is right around 3 miles, assuming there's not flooding that year. I don't remember if it was 2 years ago. I think the course actually changed twice during 24 hours because he had to shorten it because it was flooding.
That's trail racing.
And there's like a tent city, so you can set up your tent pretty close to the start finish aid station or whatever you want to say. And the aid is amazing. I mean, 2 a.m. mashed potatoes and chicken soup. And I think that's awesome. A lot of why my kids like to do it is they like to eat.
Well, and logistically, you say you've had your kids there before. Mm-hmm. It is an effort, and Alicia can probably attest to this more than me, when it comes to crewing and spectating and bringing family to some of these races, that there's like a full day of driving that has to happen. You know what I mean? Taking kids to an event that has one aid station that you get to like come around to is different than like you driving them around all day.
Right. It's definitely an adventure, but same thing. It's different than the person running, different tiredness, of course. All the family members, I think, are always very tired, but of course you don't want to say that when you're watching someone run 50, 100 miles and you're not out running. Same thing, finding contentment in that, even though it can be hard with having the kids along and stuff, but still like finding the joy in it and just seeing their dad cheer on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool when, I mean, at our kids' ages, they haven't really been to a big mountain ultra or anything. But how old are you kids now?
Lee is 19, Brendan is almost 15, and Roisin will be 11.
Gotcha. So over the past few years, they're able to kind of like not just stand by and go to this trip thing, but like participate and be part of the event.
Yep. And I think I've met all three of them at some point.
Yep, I think so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. So let's kind of back up like we do a lot of times. We get an idea of kind of what you're doing this year, but I want to see how similar or different maybe your entry point into running is to the people listening, right? We all kind of come into the sport maybe in a different way. And one of the things we've talked about before the podcast is your entry point was not the typical high school cross country and track, college cross country and track. You came into it maybe in your college years, but why didn't you run or do sports at all kind of during those more formative high school days?
Actually, my mom was worried that I would ruin my knees.
Yes.
Because she and my dad both kind of had bad knees. So I was not allowed to do any sports in high school. That being said, my stepdad actually likes to kind of take credit for my ultra running career because we had a really long driveway. He used to make us do laps as punishment. And me being the type of person I was, would do extra laps to show him that it didn't faze me.
It's not punishment.
Right. But I feel like I have always been more on the endurance side because I would go for long bike rides in the country. When I got cross-country skis, we had 10 acres, so I was just would get out there and get on the skis.
You grew up in Wisconsin?
No, I actually grew up in Michigan.
So
Lower
upper
Michigan. Lower Michigan.
Lower Michigan.
Yep.
So just as harsh a winters in some ways.
Yep.
Very good. So you got into more trail running kind of after those years in college, or how did you find the trails?
Michigan Tech has excellent cross-country ski trails, and when I was up there, they were just kind of starting to get into mountain biking and stuff like that. So I actually got on the trails first, mountain biking and cross-country skiing, and then just decided there were places that I kind of wanted to go that I felt I couldn't go on the bike or skis as easily. So then I started running the trails up there, not real regularly, but that was... I immediately liked the trails better than roads.
Yep.
And are you more a solo person, or at this time in your life were you running with friends? Or
no, I was pretty much solo. I would mountain bike and cross country ski with friends, but every once in a while my roommate Erin would go with me. She was a runner in high school, and she would kind of humor me and go with me sometimes, but I tend to always be kind of more of a solo trainer and stuff. So.
Is that still like the case now? Like that's kind of your me time?
Yeah.
Yep. Me too. Very good. Well, it's good to see you at the group runs then, because I know that people do have a love-hate relationship, honestly, with group runs, because for some folks, like just getting out the door by themselves, that's the only alone time they might have for the whole week, for the whole day. And group runs are great, and I love group runs. I love being at ours on Thursdays, but there is a different element to being out there alone as well.
I always have the best intentions about getting down to them, and I struggle with that.
Oh, no, Alicia, where are you? Like, what percentage of you likes? Well, not percentage.
I very much am someone that wants to mix it up.
Yep.
So I have like 1 or 2 days a week I run with friends, or I'll do the group run every other Thursday. But I definitely have my days where I want to be alone and need to clear my head.
Yep, I'm usually a loner, but I think once I get into the group run and when I run with the group. That's why I probably won't shut up, is because I'm like, oh, this is amazing. This is great being around people. There's people to talk to. It's like so different that I always have this like inner dialogue, and I'm thinking about things and looking at the trees alone. So that just like comes out, and I probably overspeak and just like talking to people the whole time.
I think for me, running with the community too is just the accountability. So like if I have someone to go with me even once a week, I don't know, that helps me get through the rest of the week, just being like, okay, I did that day. I got to get my minutes in this day or miles in. So it just helps me stay on track a little bit better, I think.
Right. So we talked about with Matt kind of a fork in the road as far as his training and just his running went when he went to grad school. There's a little bit of a different different like shift in his life, where something non-running related came in, and for him it was, you know, professional career with grad school. Did anything change kind of in that time where you were kind of getting through college? But then when did you like really change your running to be more regimented, and it wasn't really just more of a recreational me time?
When we moved to the Twin Cities, running actually fell off quite a bit, because I have a polymer chemistry degree, and I was having to commute and just wasn't able to run hardly at all until I had my oldest daughter in 2000, and we moved out to Hutchinson, Minnesota. Didn't know anybody. She was kind of a difficult child. She was happiest outside. I have no idea where she gets that from.
Yeah, exactly.
Happiest outside. So my husband at the time bought me a jogging stroller, and I started walking this 3.5 mile loop to just get outside, get fresh air, keep her happy for a while. And eventually I got to a point where I'm like, I wonder if I can run this whole loop. And I did. And that's kind of where it all started in probably June-ish of 2000. I got a lot more regular with running. Yeah,
so running was kind of the same but different for you at that point. You're maybe out there with a jogging stroller. I know. So what month was she born?
She was born in January.
Okay, so winter baby. So we had two different experiences with our kids. Our first one was born in April, and we're able to like kind of go for walks and have it be springtime. And we didn't live in Wisconsin at that time, and it was like, oh yeah, this is great to get fresh air. And it kind of blindsided us when our second one, we lived in Iowa, and it was December, and that was a long winter because we didn't get out as much.
He was just a different baby.
He was a different baby too. So anyway, I mean, I know I can relate just a smidge, but I know Alicia probably felt that more.
Right. I wish I would have gotten out more. I actually totally stopped running with Leo. He's the winter baby, because he was a really hard baby, and I just felt like there literally just wasn't time. But for my mental stability, I definitely had postpartum depression with him, and running probably would have been a great thing to be doing. But I felt kind of trapped. I didn't know what to do to get out of it. So
yeah. Anything similar there with just
I did
family
have
changes at the same time?
Postpartum depression with Lee. She was so difficult to get to sleep.
Yeah.
That's us too.
And even in the jogging stroller, she wouldn't fall asleep in the jogging stroller, but she would just calm down.
Yeah.
So that was just a way to keep my sanity.
Yep. Very good. And then I know that you did, it says here when we were talking before, you did your first kind of trail half marathon the next year or so, right? So you were a little bit more regular once you became a mom there. And then how did that trail half come up? Did you feel like you were running more regularly to where you just wanted to change it up, or did you just kind of feel like you wanted to go back to the trails?
Well, what was funny about that one is it was billed as a trail half, and I can't remember what park it is in the cities, northwest side of the Twin Cities. It actually ended up being paved for the majority of it, and I had trail shoes, and I wore my trail shoes, and I wore those on pavement, and by the end, I was I actually cried at the end because I was like, this wasn't actually trails. But yeah, I just wanted to see. I had kind of gradually increased my distance. I don't think I was really using any training plans or anything at that point, but just wanted to see if I could do it. That's a lot of what my running is to see if my body can do whatever it is.
And then your first marathon was the next year at Grandma's?
Was in June 2002 was Grandma's. Yep.
Good. So pretty natural. I mean, you did a half and then a full, and then it doesn't say that you did your first ultras when?
2010.
Okay. So there's a 8-year roughly gap in there from marathons on the road anyway to ultras. What did that look like? Was it just kind of more of the same, or?
Well, I had my son in 2004 and I didn't run while pregnant. I did trail races. I think my first Afton 25K was in 2005, something like that. And way back then the Minnesota trail group had a the trail series back then even, and I did enough that I actually won for my age group.
Yeah.
I think I was maybe the only one or two in my age group at that point in time.
Someone looked that up. She probably killed everyone.
No. But I just did all kinds of little trail races. I did Whistle Stop Marathon full in 2006. And then I had Roisin in 2008. Again, didn't run while I was pregnant. And just it's basically just kind of been little breaks, build back up, little break, build back up.
How is your building back up? Have you surprised yourself with how quickly it comes back, or has it been the opposite? I know that there's kind of this overwhelming sense that it's really good to take these macro cycles of rest off. And a lot of times women are a lot more durable later in their running careers because they have some natural ways, childbearing might be one of them, to take rest. And I think men are just more hard-headed with their training. And I read an article where everyone essentially should be taking not just like a day off a week and you go into your down week after an A race, but these macro cycles of like 18 months, not of doing nothing, but where you're intentionally resting more than you have in the past 5 years or whatever. How did the building back up go? Maybe it was different for each kid, but did you surprise yourself with, oh yeah, I can get back up to, a trail race or to feeling good again after you had an extended time off?
I do feel actually just generally over the years it's gotten easier. And I guess I don't know. I've never pinpointed that to, I took 9 months off because I had a kid, but I think your body just kind of gets used to running all those years too. So
it's compounding mileage too. What about you, Lish?
For me, some of it's like even perspective after I don't know, like the older my kids have gotten, or like it's easier for me to get out and run than it used to be. Like 30 minutes away used to be like, oh gosh, 30 minutes like in between feedings, and it was so much like schedule, where it's like, okay, I'm going to go away for an hour and this is so good for me to get out for an hour. There's just more perspective on it, I guess. And so it just seems easier to get away, and a lot of that has to do, like I said, with kids' age. So if you're a mom with like little itty bitties, it does get easier. I'm not saying it's a different hard, but like just give yourself grace and time in those little tiny years because it goes by so quickly.
Yeah, good. So so by 2010, or when did your last baby was born?
Roisin was born in 2008.
Okay, 2008. Yeah. Good. So 2010, we're doing our first ultra, kind of getting into the trails and the mountains and the ultras again. And it reminded me when you started talking about Afton and Whistle Stop, what are some of your favorite like area races? Because I feel like people around this area know that, the Superior races are really awesome and people kind of like pinpoint those in the spring and the fall. But what are some that either maybe people don't know about or just are your favorites?
I would say Afton and Goosebumps are actually my two favorite. And that's kind of funny because they are completely different beasts too.
Yeah. One of them is pretty flat, right? Goosebumps isn't. Yeah,
very, very flat.
Very flat. Afton's on a ski hill.
Right. Yep.
I think you introduced us even to some of the talk about it, because we're doing both those. Not both of us, but we're both signed up for those races just because of some of the talk we've had with you even.
Yeah, no, it's good. I think that's one thing that that's kind of invaluable. RunEauClair.com has a big calendar of area races. You get some really good. The Indian Head Track Club puts a bunch of races on that, or they put on their website. They do put races on, and then they put on their website a lot of them around town. But I feel like it's kind of that intangible, like, the runners know and they share like the experience. Once you get kind of the knowledge base of like what races identities are, which ones are kind of old school and laid back, which ones are really built up to be a professional event, all the runners need to like talk more, because you don't really know just looking at a cool website, know. Cool. So then this is kind of just the beginning of Deana's story. We know that through the store, just getting to know her a little bit and seeing her journey. I actually didn't know everything that we've talked about now, kind of her backstory, but a really significant big event happened kind of more in that 2013 timeframe, right? So,
Correct.
So walk us through that, how it impacted running, how it impacted the rest of your life, and where you are now.
In December 2013, I was diagnosed with stage 3A invasive ductal carcinoma. It was a matter of I saw some dimpling in my breasts, probably had other things going on that I wasn't paying attention to. For instance, I did the Icebox 480 race at the beginning of November and was just dog tired. The last lap was such a struggle. And, hindsight 2020 now, there's a good chance I was tired because my body was fighting cancer.
Yeah.
But I finally went in December 12th of 2013. The doctor I saw thought it was significant enough that I should get a mammogram, and then, kind of snowballed from there. I was diagnosed on December 20th, despite the surgeon saying, I think you have less than a 1% chance of this actually being cancer. You're super young, no real family history, you're really healthy, etc. Have a bottle of wine. You're probably going to be celebrating good news, and then to have it be bad news, it was kind of a shock.
Yep. So talk us through that. I don't know those stages or that diagnosis.
Okay.
Like, is that honest? I guess there is a scale. There's stage 3A, right? So talk us through how severe or how quickly you needed treatment.
It was very quick. I actually just found out a couple months ago it was as aggressive as it can be.
Wow.
There's a scale. I don't know if it's 0 to 9 or whatever, and it was a 9. 3A, the 3 is based on size. It was a 4.5 by 3 by 4 centimeter mass.
Yep.
The A means it was in lymph nodes. It had gone into 3 lymph nodes into my armpit. And because it was in lymph nodes, that obviously informed treatment, what they had to do. I had to have 6 rounds of pretty much as aggressive chemo as they will give people.
Wow. How long? What span of time are those 6 rounds?
The 6 rounds are every 3 weeks. So it's the first week obviously isn't that bad, and then you start feeling worse and worse and worse, and then you kind of feel a little bit better that third week, and then you have it again. And it's cumulative too. So by the 6th one, I was super duper sick. I didn't even want to have the 6th one.
Yep.
And because you said you were young and healthy, do you mind sharing your age?
I was 38 when diagnosed.
And just for health and prevention, am I correct in saying you're supposed to get your first mammo usually around 40?
40,
okay.
Yep, if you have no family history.
Right.
And while I do have a paternal aunt that had it, they didn't consider that, immediate enough family.
And so were you, not because this is running podcast, did you completely take off running in this chunk of time with chemo?
Right. Well, actually, my first chemo treatment, I did almost die because it killed my white blood cell count dropped so much that I ended up in the hospital in sepsis and quarantine for a while.
Wow.
And then they were we had to fight my insurance at the time, but they were able to give me the Neulasta shot, which helped make sure that my blood count didn't fall too much. But they did encourage me, run when you can, run when you feel like it. That's only gonna help,
Just with blood flow
cleaning the chemo out of your system and stuff like that. So they definitely encouraged me to try and stay as active as I could. And And I did. I tried to run when I could, but those were some of the hardest miles because I was so sick.
Yeah. And I don't want to make any brash comparison. I mean, putting ourselves through an ultra or some really difficult event. First of all, you're doing it voluntarily. It's not life and death. It is a painful experience, but it just scratches the surface to something like you've experienced with breast cancer. Is there any kind of not comparison, but lessons that you had taken, whether it's mental fortitude or just honestly pain management when it comes to going into chemo and restoration of the treatment that you had to do? Did you feel like your lessons or kind of your ultra running self endurance minded Deana was helpful in going into treatment like this, or was it just a whole different ballgame?
Well, I feel like it would have been a lot harder if I hadn't been healthy.
Right.
If I hadn't been running, if I didn't have all those miles and all those experiences under my belt. But yes, kind of the ultra mentality of just, if you have a low spot, just keep moving.
Yep.
Things are going to get better.
One more mile.
Yep. And that's kind of how I had to look at this whole year-long cancer journey is there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Things will get better at some point.
Yep. So you mentioned 1 year journey.
Yep.
Was it, and I know you mentioned they kind of count how long you've been either cancer-free based on surgery times.
Correct.
So how long from when you knew you had the diagnosis to when they said you were cancer-free?
That was about 6 months, 5-6 months, because
Okay.
I had the 6 treatments, and then they waited, I want to say 3 or 4 weeks before I had the surgery. They had hoped with the chemo that they would be able to shrink the tumor enough that I would only have to have a lumpectomy, but there was enough necrotic tissue that they weren't able to save my breast. And then I opted to have a double because I didn't ever want to go through it again.
Yeah.
So that surgery was May 19th, and that's when they count me as cancer-free because they were able to get anything.
Anything
I had
out.
had a complete response to the chemo, and they were able to get everything out.
Right.
So.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, how did your journey back to not just fitness, but kind of normal life, what did that even involve? There's maybe more treatment after that, right?
Correct.
But when did you, I assume, now it's 2019, we're 5 years, 6 years later.
5 years almost.
So I assume that, well, correct me if I'm wrong, do you feel like you're kind of living your normal active life like you did before, or are there any precautions and different lifestyle changes that you have still now?
Well, I did have to have radiation as well. And then I had one more small surgery kind of in December that year. In January, January 2015 then, I decided to start running again, and I came back using heart rate training, which was actually really shocking to me because like 15-minute miles, not even really running was where I had to start at.
Yep. I hear you. That's where I was coming back to.
Yep, totally.
But then, I still have to take, I guess they kind of call it a chemo pill, but it's technically an estrogen blocker. Since my cancer was estrogen positive, I have to take that for 10 years. And that makes me a lot more tired. It causes leg cramping, stuff like that. But otherwise, I feel like I'm pretty much normal again.
Yeah.
My memory still isn't good. I still try and play the chemo brain card. But
You had mentioned in your little bio you sent to us that you later, after cancer, got injured, correct?
Correct.
Do you think that was due to like coming back too strong, like wanting to run again, or just ironically?
I don't. What ended up happening is basically I had undiagnosed celiac disease. I have no idea how long I had it because I was asymptomatic pretty much.
Right.
I always kind of had stomach issues, but I just chalked that up as stomach issues. So I don't know if the celiac was maybe triggered by chemo, and I kind of fought it there for a year and a half, or what happened there. But no, I think I was actually, I felt like I was pretty smart with how slowly I came back. My mind obviously wanted me to come back a lot faster than my body was letting me.
I can't imagine. Well, we've had this time to speak with you on the calendar for a while, but just yesterday, and I'm going to post a link to this in the show notes here, blueox.run/podcast3. There's a really cool video of put on by Billy Yang. He puts out a bunch of trail running videos about the Dave Mackey story, which is not cancer, but it is. He's had to amputate his leg because of a trail running accident, and a couple years in recovery, obviously, and making the decision to amputate. And then most recently, this past year, he ran the Leadman series. I mean, he ran Leadville 100. He biked Leadville 100. So. One of the nuggets in there, though, was that it was a huge breakthrough moment when he didn't have to walk with the walker, and walking with his new leg almost felt like walking all over again. He was given this newfound freedom, and you could just tell in this little hallway that he puts his new running leg on. He's like wanting to just sprint out the door, and that's not the right thing for him on that day, obviously, and he's got to start super slow, and it's like this year of going super slow and figuring it out. But he's been a runner all of his life, and it's the same but different. Like, he's able to come back and run on the trails and be in the mountains and be with his kids and walks, and that's ultimately his decision that led him to amputating so he could walk normal again with a prosthetic. But of course, your life is different afterwards, and getting back out there is a longer journey than all of us stubborn runners probably want it to be. You probably want to go quicker than you should.
Yeah.
All right. So you did have some setback in that. I mean, you had celiac, but the stress fracture, was that a double stress fracture because of that same time frame, or what was going on with this? Because you came back your first year running really good, 2015,
right? And
then it was the second year that was a follow-on stress fracture, right?
Right. Yeah. I had an awesome 2015. I did really well at the Fans 12-hour, and then got my distance PR at Goosebumps, which was around 70 miles, and then kind of stepped back. I didn't really have much planned for that the rest of that fall.
Yep.
And then decided I wanted to try and PR the marathon at Grandma's in 2016. And I think I followed like a Hale Higdon plan. I don't remember. I actually followed a plan, though.
Right.
Although I did run the Eau Claire Marathon as part of my Grandma's marathon training.
Yeah.
And just everything was going perfectly. I was hitting pretty much all of I was doing a little bit of speed work for the first time in my life, basically. Everything was going really, really well. And then I went out for a 4-mile run and had some hip pain. Didn't think a heck of a lot of it, but I tried to run a couple more times and it was hurting. So I took basically kind of like 2 weeks off before Grandma's, was feeling pretty good. Stepped down off a curb a little bit wrong, getting off the bus at the start of Grandma's. Tried running and I got to about 8 miles and just was in way too much pain. So
oh my gosh.
I was the way I am and walked the last 18 of it to finish it.
It's that old driveway that you grew up on. So
no PR that day.
No.
That's right.
And the thing is, as long as I kept moving, it felt fine. But then once I got to the finish, it was pretty painful.
Yeah.
And I walked around on it again for another probably 3 weeks because I went to the doctor and they thought it was tendonitis. And eventually it was painful enough that I went in and saw an orthopedist, and they're like, yeah, you have 2 stress fractures
oh my gosh.
underneath the ball of your hip. We're not even going to let you drive home.
Was that from stepping off the curb?
Well, I'm thinking that 4-mile run is where it probably started.
And then you had training on top of that.
A little bit,
Gotcha.
but not a lot. But I think stepping off the curve is probably when it got bad,
Yeah. Yep.
But had to have emergency hip surgery. I have a plate and screw in my hip now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And they're again, you're young, you're healthy. We don't understand why this happened.
Right.
We're going to run all these different tests. They tested thyroid and vitamin D and celiac, and the one is like, please don't let me be celiac. I love my weedy peanut butter toast in the morning. And that's the one that came back. My results were actually off the charts. Just like it was really, really bad. So yeah, the coming back from hip surgery was actually way harder than coming back from breast cancer. Just yeah. The screw stabilized the stress fractures, so it felt better right away, but all of the trauma from them, going through my muscles and stuff
oh my goodness,
is what took a long, long time to come back from. So.
Wow. So and that was 2016, right around there. When do you feel like that comeback, you said, was longer, more painful maybe when you run? When did you feel normal again? Or do you not?
I'm just kind of now feeling normal. I can definitely still tell that my right leg is weaker.
Yeah.
I was actually just battling knee stuff here in January and kind of had to step back my training a little bit to let it rest. But just now is where I'm kind of finally feeling normal again, I guess.
Cool. Well, anything else you want to share? I know that we're getting into 2019 here. It doesn't feel like any of this snow is going to go anywhere. But your first event is going to be Chippewa?
Yep.
Is that right? Nothing leading up to that?
Well, I might do, little 5Ks or something like that just to...
Or do you have any advice? Just because I think a lot of people are going to hear this and be like, okay, you've battled cancer.
Right. Stress fractures.
You didn't start out as a runner. Yeah, stress fractures. And here you are still...
plugging away.
Yes. Like, any advice or just...
Well, a huge one for me is just listen to your body. You kind of said that earlier too. I don't know if I would have listened to the fatigue and stuff if maybe we would have caught the cancer a little bit earlier and it wouldn't have been, as crazy treatments. And then maybe if I wouldn't have, walked the last 18 miles, it wouldn't have had to be emergency surgery.
Right.
But basically your body can do amazing things too. I mean, I'm amazed that I am still running because even after the hip surgery, they said, we don't know that if you'll be doing distance ever again. So
that perspective is hopefully we can all catch some of that. I mean, maybe without being put through the ringer like you have, but like, how has that shifted, even just enjoying going out for a icy cold run, which, I'm even prone to complain about the weather and being out there and training and being regimented with needing to hit this mileage or this workout. And you're still regimented. You still have goals. You still have what you need to do for the week. But do you feel yourself going up a level and just being either more grateful or have a bigger perspective on just being able to do what you do now that you've been not able to do it for some of those years?
No, I am so thankful that I can run. I feel like I kind of look at everything with fresh eyes too. I'm lucky that I can run on these snowy, icy days.
Yep.
I could be sitting on the sofa not able to do anything at all.
Or worse, like in the Dave Mackey story, they said, this boulder came and crushed his leg. And that's a tragedy, and he lost his leg, but it could have crushed his head.
Right.
It could, it always could have been better, and it always could have been worse as well.
Well, and the other thing is, everybody, well, maybe not everybody, a lot of people like to make little mantras that they tell themselves, and my mantra now is, at least this is easier than chemo.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely.
I wanted to share a little fun fact about you too, because we didn't touch on it, is that you have tattooed your chest where your breast used to be, correct?
Correct.
And she was on a billboard it was in Eau Claire, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so she's featured, she's famous on this billboard.
Krieger
show
tattoo,
that,
right?
Krieger, yep.
Krieger?
Yep.
Yeah, so I just think it's a beautiful work of art to show.
Yeah.
We'll put Deana's Instagram. Do you have a public account?
I think it's public.
Okay,
yeah.
I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. blueox.run/podcast3. It's really cool because you've kind of like taken photos along the way.
Correct.
I mean, because that's been a long time coming.
Yeah, that was. I think it took us right around a year to do it all. I think about 6 sessions, but yeah,
Wow.
He did an amazing job. I'm really happy with it. Yeah.
Very cool. Friend of the store. I've had the whole gang in here, the whole family with Krieger. They're really cool. Very good. Anything else you guys want to share before we do the old faster, slow, let's go mantra together?
What about the speed round?
Oh, speed round. Yes. Speed round. We're going to do 3 questions, really quick answers, and then we'll wrap up. Yeah, good call.
I'll start it out just because we were talking about tattoos. So how many tattoos do you have?
7.
7. All right. What's your favorite meal to eat, not before the race, but after the race?
Favorite after? Oh my gosh. It's not favorite, but I tend to eat eggs because I know I need the protein.
There you go. Yeah, very good.
What about favorite thing to do with your kids?
Hike, I'd say.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, that's going to be it for episode 3. Deana, thank you so much for being on with us.
Thank you for having
I feel
me.
like we could go for another hour. It's been 50 minutes, which felt like about 5 minutes. We love your story. We love having different people in the store that honestly share something that I haven't experienced, that Alicia hasn't experienced. This is where we feel like the running community is very strong because it's all kind of the same but different, right? Deana's out there every day. Deana's out there crushing the hills and the ice and the wind, so that's kind of the same, but she has an incredible story, so that is definitely different. So on the count of 3, we're doing faster, slow, let's go to finish it out. And everyone else, find us on iTunes, Facebook, all that good stuff. blueox.run/podcast for all of our episodes and to subscribe. 1, 2, 3. Faster, slow, let's go.
Fast, 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 fast.
Let's go!